Welcome to Beyond the Known. Today, we're diving deep into a real enduring mystery, Project Blue Book.
It really is. Keeps popping up, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You've shared this great collection of sources with us. We've got firsthand accounts of strange things in the sky, whispers of government secrecy, even the seeds of modern conspiracy theories.
Yeah, real mix.
So our mission today is to try and unpack the core of Project Blue Book. Why did it even start? What was it trying to figure out?
And maybe why those questions it raised still linger, why we're still talking about it.
Exactly. Okay, let's get into it.
Well, the first thing to really grasp, I think, is the time period. We're talking post-World War II America.
Right.
Your sources highlight a nation really pushing technological boundaries, especially aviation. Places like Arizona became super important strategically.
Yeah.
Think Luke Air Force Base, named after Frank Luke Jr., the WWI pilot.
So a climate of rapid development and also heightened national security concerns.
Precisely. That's the backdrop for these early strange sightings.
And speaking of early, there's this account from 1941, which is even before the famous Roswell incident really hit the headline.
You mean the Cape Girardeau, Missouri one?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Recounted by Charlotte Mann, whose grandfather, Reverend Huffman, was apparently called out by the police.
To pray over crash victims, wasn't it? That's the story.
That's the story. And her recollection, it describes this disc-shaped object, quite a heavy presence, police, fire, FBI, military from a nearby Army air base.
Wow. So a major response.
Seems like it. And inside this object, she mentions metal chairs, controls, these sort of hieroglyphic-like markings.
Okay, getting stranger.
And then the description of the occupants. 3 small bodies, non-human-looking hairless, big eyes, small mouth, large heads, small ears, about 4 feet tall.
That's quite specific.
Very specific. No apparent bone structure, long arms and fingers. Reverend Huffman supposedly ministered over them, then was sworn to secrecy. National security,
And this story, it wasn't just him, right? His wife, the granddaughter Charlotte, even his brother, Sheriff Clarence Shade, apparently confirmed parts of it.
That's what the sources suggest. Charlotte even recalled seeing a photo later, supposedly showing 2 men holding one of these bodies from the crash.
And what do investigators think? You mentioned UFO journalist B.J. Booth.
Yeah, Booth apparently found Charlotte Mann credible, suggesting the story might actually be authentic.
Which, if true, is pretty huge. It pushes the whole potential extraterrestrial visitor and government cover-up narrative back to 1941, way earlier than most people think.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is this where it all started, behind the scenes?
It definitely plants that seed.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't an isolated thing, these weird sightings.
No, the sources point to others, like the Polish merchant ship, the SS Pulaski, seeing a glowing green globe in the Indian Ocean.
And then there are the Foo Fighters during World War II.
Right. Reported by pilots on both sides, Allied and Axis. Fast, round, glowing things, red, white, orange. Seemed intelligently controlled, but not hostile.
Initially, they thought maybe German secret weapons.
Yeah, that was the first guess. But it didn't really fit. Time magazine even ran an article, Foo Fighter, January 45.
And similar balls of fire were seen in the Pacific Theater, too. So, widespread.
It really suggests something genuinely unexplained was happening up there during the war. It wasn't just, mistaking enemy planes.
No, it seems like more than that. A persistent presence of something unusual.
And then comes the Battle of Los Angeles, February 42.
Ah, yes, that's a famous one.
An unidentified object over L.A. Thousands of witnesses, military included, and the military opens up over 1,440 anti-aircraft rounds fired.
With 0 hits, apparently.
0 hits. The initial explanation was a Japanese bomber, then later maybe a lost weather balloon or just misidentification.
Which, given the scale of the response and the sheer number of eyewitnesses, feels a bit inadequate.
It does seem insufficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Firing that much ammo at a weather balloon. It raises questions about what officials really thought was happening or what they were willing to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It highlights how difficult it was, maybe still is, to explain some of these things conventionally.
So, okay. We've got this backdrop of wartime sightings, strange objects, a big incident over L.A., and then the war ends. What happens next?
Well, you see the formalization of intelligence structures. The Central Intelligence Group in 46, then the CIA proper, and the National Security Act under Truman in 47.
And there's an early interest, it seems, in tracking these UFO reports. The sources mention a CIG plan to monitor sightings through newspapers.
Right. And then, boom, June 1947, Kenneth Arnold.
The sighting near Mount Rainier. 9 unidentified objects, and he coins the term flying saucer.
Which just takes off. It completely captures the public imagination, a real watershed moment.
Suddenly, everyone's seeing saucers. It spurs this huge wave of reports.
And you have to think, this public wave, combined with whatever the military and intelligence folks were already tracking or worrying about, it creates pressure for a more formal response.
Which leads us to another sighting just a month later, July 47 in Phoenix. William Rhodes.
He got photos, didn't he?
He did. A saucer-like object. But here's the kicker. The photos were examined by a special agent Aldrich. And according to the account, the negatives and maybe even the camera were taken.
And never returned.
Never returned. Those photos were apparently even shown to Kenneth Arnold later as a reference.
See that alleged confiscation?
Yeah.
It adds another layer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests maybe more than just casual investigation. Were they trying to control the narrative?
Right.
Suppress evidence?
It fuels that whole secrecy angle.
Whoa.
And Arizona keeps popping up. There are these alleged crashes in the Dreamy Draw area, also around 47.
Multiple accounts there, right?
Yeah, one from a guy named Saunders claiming he found a downed saucer, 2 bodies, stored them in his freezer.
In his freezer? Seriously?
That's the story. And then government agents supposedly showed up and took everything. It apparently even impacted where Cave Creek Road was built.
Wow, okay.
Then there's another account. Prospectors see a saucer crash near Cave Creek, and later 2 guys, Selman Graves and Bob Malone, stumble upon this large metallic silver dome nearby. Graves later connected this to stuff in Frank Scully's book Behind Flying Saucers, which mentioned a Cave Creek crash with the bodies recovered. And Timothy Good's book Above Top Secret had a minor story about a government recovery near Mistress Mine.
And the crash site supposedly ended up under the Cave Creek landfill, with debris moved to Dreamy Draw.
That's the claim. Multiple alleged crashes in that same area in a pretty short time frame. It paints this picture of intense activity and potential cover-ups. Hard to verify, of course, but it's part of the lore.
It definitely forms a cornerstone of that narrative: crashes, retrievals, bodies, government secrecy. Even if it's anecdotal, it's a persistent theme.
So all this activity in 47, Arnold, Rhodes, the Dreamy Draw stuff, it seems to force the government's hand, right?
It appears so. That's when you get Project Saucer, initiated by Air Force General Nathan Twining. The goal was basically to gather and figure out this UFO data.
And that evolved into Project Sign.
Correct. Project Sign became the first officially labeled U.S. government study of UFOs, a formal acknowledgement, finally.
Though how transparent it really was, that's another question.
Absolutely. Were they just studying? Or also managing public perception, dealing with national security fears? Probably a mix of all 3.
And whenever you talk about early UFO investigations and secrecy, the name Majestic 12 eventually comes up.
MJ-12, the big one.
Bob Lazar, decades later, claimed he had majestic clearance related to Area 51. But the original theory posits this ultra-secret group, just 12 people, trusted by President Truman.
Right, the idea being they oversaw everything UFO-related. Public relations, covert ops, the whole deal. A hidden layer of control.
It definitely taps into that deep suspicion about government secrecy, especially around something potentially this huge.
Yeah, the idea of a tiny group holding all the cards, knowing things the public doesn't. It resonates.
And one name often linked to this alleged group is James Forrestal, first U.S. Secretary of Defense.
A complex figure, very anti-Soviet, clashed with Truman, forced to resign.
Then his mental health declined, and he tragically died by suicide. But of course, theories emerged.
Theories that it wasn't suicide.
Exactly. That it was a covert op, maybe CIA, because he supposedly planned to leak UFO information. His name allegedly appears on Majestic 12 documents.
And his known concerns about Soviet threats, which Eisenhower apparently corroborated later, kind of fits the high-stakes Cold War context where maybe keeping UFO secrets seemed paramount.
It's this tangled web of politics, paranoia, and the genuinely unknown. The theories suggest this MJ-12 group, or something like it, continued influencing presidents, controlling access to this majestic information.
Yeah, whether MJ-12 was real or not, the idea of it reflects the atmosphere of the time and the enduring questions about who knew what and when.
Now, just briefly, because it often gets confused or mentioned alongside this stuff, especially online, Project Bluebeam.
Yeah, that's a much more recent conspiracy theory. Very different beast.
Totally different. We saw it mentioned in some of the newer source material, like from the Y-Files on YouTube. It's not historical like Blue Book.
No, Bluebeam theory is basically about a faked alien invasion.
Cool.
Using holograms, mind control, all orchestrated to create a one-world government.
Yeah, it outlines these supposed stages. breaking down knowledge, a giant space light show with holograms, telepathic communication, then a fake invasion using man-made UFOs and disinformation.
The idea being that the current buzz about UFOs, military disclosures, etc., is all groundwork for this massive deception.
Right. So important to distinguish it from the historical investigations of Project Blue Book, even though both involve UFOs and government secrecy themes. Bluebeam is a whole other, more modern conspiracy narrative.
Good clarification. They often get conflated.
So, okay, wrapping this part up. What does it all mean? We've gone from these intriguing, sometimes unsettling accounts in the 1940s through the official, yet ultimately kind of inconclusive investigations like Project Sign and eventually Blue Book itself.
And the sources you pulled together paint this picture of early serious government interest, maybe even encounters, and the birth of these powerful theories about secrecy and maybe even non-human intelligence.
Project Blue Book did officially end, but the mysteries it touched on, the questions it couldn't or maybe wouldn't answer, they're still fueling speculation today.
Absolutely. That idea of hidden truths, powerful forces operating behind the scenes, whether it's a small advisory group like MJ-12 or something else, entirely, it clearly resonates deeply with people.
This deep dive, it really leaves us pondering, doesn't it? How do we tell the difference between genuine investigation and potential disinformation, especially with a topic like this?
Yeah, and what's our responsibility as people interested in these things to critically examine these extraordinary claims and the narratives built around them?
It really feels like the search for answers. Well, it continues far beyond the known, doesn't it?
It certainly does. The legacy isn't just in the old files. It's in the ongoing questions about reality, secrecy, and our place in the universe.
Right.